Top 10 Fascinating Brazil Facts. Brazil is currently the subject of attention worldwide. 2 years after the Soccer World Cup there in 2014, the Olympics also held in Rio de Janeiro. However, numerous anti-corruption protests, unfinished stadiums, and persistent outages worry a lot of people. Brazilians, on the other hand, have perfect pubic hair and know how to throw a party. Knowing this South American behemoth is a good idea because some predict it will be one of the world's next superpowers. Number 10. The Knitters in Prison. Arisvaldo de Campos Pires, a facility with the highest level of security, is located 160 kilometers from Rio de Janeiro. It's a prison with armed guards wearing balaclavas, but it also has a lot more domestic issues. The Lotus Flower Project was created by Brazilian clothing designer Raquel Guimarães as a result of her difficulty in locating knitters. She thought some of the nation's toughest criminals would be the ideal fit to increase productivity after a run of success. Brazilian inmates are paid 75% of the minimum salary, with 25% of their earnings held back until their release. They also get a day off from their sentence for every 3 days spent making high fashion out of wool. It is obviously good for people to learn a skill, become used to working, and have some money on hand in order to keep them out of circumstances where they would transgress again. Number 9. Nazis from Brazil. Although the Nazis had their faults, which is something we can all agree on, they were anything but lacking in ambition. In their desire for world dominion, they had other regions in mind than Europe and Russia. In 1935, close to Brazil's border with French Guiana, a Nazi team looked into the idea of setting up an outpost in the Amazon rainforest. The crew suffered a member's death during the trip, and in the rainforest stands a 2.8-meter cross with the inscription, "Joseph Greiner died here on February 1, 1936, a death from fever in the service of German research work." The party's leader was Dr. Otto Schultz-Kampf-Henkel, an SS officer. Although Himmler lost interest in the project and it was abandoned, Brazil's ties to the Nazis were far from over. When the war was over, many Nazis fled to Brazil because of its strong fascist links. He thought that settling in Brazil had enormous promise and told Himmler that for the more advanced white race it gives amazing prospects for exploitation. A safe in Sao Paulo belonging to the deceased German immigrant Albert Blum was found to have $4 million in war booty plundered from Jewish homes in 1997. Dr. Joseph Mengele, the Nazi angel of death, is the most notorious person to have lived in Brazil after the war. As a result of his presence, an urban legend concerning the settlement of Candido Godoy was created. There has been speculation that Mengele's experiments are to blame for the very high twin birth rate in the remote Brazilian town. The natives were already having many twins before he arrived, and they kept doing so after Mengele's death, proving this to be false. Claims that the twins in the hamlet are the result of a Nazi experiment naturally offend them. Number 8. Favela Tourism. Rio de Janeiro's shantytowns are well known. The favelas are home to 1.4 million people, or 5% of the city's population. A large number of poor people is typically not a breeding ground for opportunities. Brazil's favelas were notoriously dangerous because the residents were frequently forced into a life of crime. The Brazilian government has been working to make the towns seem better recently. Police are brought in to fight the drug gangs as part of this pacification program, and the infrastructure is upgraded with new buildings and protected walkways. A decent concrete staircase can substantially enhance your quality of life if you reside on the side of a mountain that is 1,000 meters high. Because of the program's popularity, a brand new industry called Favela Tourism has emerged. The first favela to be stabilized was Santa Marta. Currently, some people give paid excursions to visitors of the area. The homes still have a dilapidated facade, with many of them being made of wood and cinder blocks. Inside, they include flat-screen TVs and fitted kitchens. Celebrities like Madonna and Beyoncé had stopped by to have a peek at the remodeled slums. Number 7. Dogs in a Favela. Large, decaying settlements perched on a hill are home to more than just people. Dogs live in every one of the hundreds of buildings in the slum in Caxias do Sul. Because it lacked the resources to erect an appropriate shelter, an animal welfare organization called So Ama, which is Portuguese for just love, erected it. They house 1,600 animals there, all of them are confined to shacks. The animals eat 13 tons of food each month. Unfortunately, most people only want to adopt purebred puppies. The more experienced mongrels fail at it. The group is struggling because animal care costs are higher than donations or government financing. The founder acknowledges that she experiences guilt from time to time for not being able to create a suitable animal sanctuary, but the alternative would be to turn away dogs and allow them to die on the streets. Number 6. Fishing with dolphins. Laguna, a city in Brazil, is home to one of the most incredible human-animal friendships on the planet. While they wait for their dolphin helpers to arrive, the local fishermen begin their day by wading into the sea with their nets in tow. The water is too foggy for humans to see beneath it, but dolphins can. Huge catches are made when the fishermen deploy their nets in the direction of the dolphins. If there are no dolphins present, the locals advise avoiding bothering. Nobody is certain of the custom's precise antecedents or of its intended advantages for dolphins. Some hypotheses contend that the presence of nets causes fish to become confused, enabling dolphins to capture larger, and frequently quicker, species. The dolphins seem excited because they continuously participate, whatever their motivations may be. The fishermen can tell people apart even by their names. With the obvious exception of the delectable fish, everyone seems to come out ahead in the end. Number 5. Bumba-Meu-Boi Boy. If you had the option to select any country to serve on the organizing committee for a carnival, Brazil would undoubtedly be your selection. Rio is famed for its colorful parades, but there are more amazing street festivals outside the renowned Carnaval do Brasil. The procession called Bomba Mayu Boy is also fantastic. The procession, which is particularly well liked in the nation's north, is based on a distinctive folktale. Although there are many variations, the core concept is constant. The largest animal in the nation, an ox, belongs to a wealthy farmer who hires a young farmhand to care for it. The farmhand murders the animal he is tending to in order to fulfill his expectant wife's yearning for ox tongue. Understandably furious, the farmer decides to kill the farmhand. With the help of the locals and a visit from St. John, the peasant revives the bull using drums. The farmer then excuses him because, regardless of whether you are their employer, it is never a good idea to meddle with those who possess supernatural skills. In São Luís, 200 different teams compete to create the most impressive replica of the event by dressing as oxen. The mob is told to jeer the farmer since he is the evil guy in all of this, not the supernatural ox murderer. The moral of the story is probably that you can murder the thing you're being paid to take care of as long as you can use a funky beat to revive it. Number 4. Casa De Pedra. The ability to repair a slum is not limited to the government. A single person, Estevão Conceição, spent 20 years converting a dilapidated slum building into an eclectic treasure trove. Almost everything is stacked up against the stone arches, including plates, dolls, cell phones, typewriters, motorcycle helmets, shoes, and pretty much anything else. He became well known not just in Paraisópolis, the São Paulo slum where he developed it, but it also allowed him to travel to Spain. Conceição's Casa de Pedra, popularly known as the House of Stone, inspired a visiting architecture student to recall the works of famed Spanish Catalan architect Antoni Gaudí. After the Center for Gaudinist Studies agreed, Conceição was flown to review the architect's work. Conceição admits that their techniques are similar, despite the fact that he had never heard of Gaudí before beginning. Around the existing tree, he constructed his residence, adding to it organically over time. Number 3. Sambaqui. The Egyptian pyramids could not have been built by humans, it is generally agreed. As the numerous people who are watching this via satellite would probably verify, man is not able to lift heavy objects very high. The native Brazilian population used a pyramid building technique that even the History Channel is unlikely to credit to extraterrestrials or fairies, despite the fact that it is obvious that werewolves on broomsticks helped the Egyptians move stone. Sambaquis are ancient mounds formed of soil, bones, and shells that may be 8,000 years old. The highest of them reaching a height of 50 meters, they were once thought to be nothing more than overgrown trash heaps by academics. According to more recent research, these are the oldest pyramids in the world, which suggests they were built on purpose. Since many were depleted for supplies used in road construction, only 10% of them still exist. There is substantial proof that they were used for funerals and the interment of the deceased among their many other potential applications, much like their Egyptian counterparts. They suggest a more developed ancient civilization than we previously believed when taken as a whole. Number 2. Indigenous firefighters. Although the harm that human activity poses to the rainforest is well known, nature itself is a bigger hazard. Wildfires damage more woodland each year than human activities. It is difficult to put out fires in the Amazon because of its enormity. In Brazil alone, the rainforest covers an area 6 times the size of Texas. That suggests that a single 5-man fire squad is capable of encircling an area the size of England. The only way to put out underbrush fires is to beat them with a stick until they go out. The oppressively muggy woodland is maintained at a constant temperature of about 27 Celsius without a roaring fire. Firefighters may also spend many hours chopping their way through the trees before they can even get to the fire. Rural Brazilian firefighters must be in outstanding physical condition given all of these difficulties. Because they can't be everywhere at once, the firefighters need help. They have turned to using warriors from the far-off, indigenous tribes. The villagers are excited to put on their full-body overalls and gas masks instead of their usual loincloths so they may take part in the action. The firemen provide training and equipment to the locals so that they can put out fires before they become problems if they happen to start nearby. Cattle farming, which in the past has contributed to deforestation, has made an effort to make amends by providing private funding to comparable programs. The United States Area Service has additionally provided assistance and expertise during visits to the forest. Number 1. Japanese Brazilians. At the beginning of the 20th century, Japan was concerned about its population. As a result of increasing industrialization and population migration to the city, there were growing concerns about the scarcity of resources, thus the government decided to promote emigration as a policy. Many of the tens of thousands of emigrant Japanese went to Brazil to work on coffee farms to support themselves. Only 7% of those who were supposed to move back to Japan after they became richer in fact did. Therefore, Brazil is where 62% of Japanese people who live abroad, including descendants of Japanese immigrants. Overall, there has been a pretty noticeable assimilation of Japanese individuals into Brazilian society. 40% of the population is made up of immigrants who were of Japanese descent. In São Paulo, there is an area that is Japanese, and many manga fans can be seen dressed up there. However, the plot has a turn. In the 1980s, Japan was looking for foreign labor to aid its quickly growing auto sector. Brazil, which was overflowing with locals who were already familiar with the language and culture, was the ideal place to hunt for them. Tens of thousands were persuaded to return to Japan by numerous incentives. It is now precisely where it was a century ago thanks to this. Due to demographic issues, Japan is currently looking to pay people to move back to Brazil. Even if the Japanese government is prepared to cover their plane tickets, many people don't want to return to South America. Brazil's public services suffer from unemployment and corruption, but Japan's public services are superior. As a result of the entire situation, many families have been geographically and culturally divided between two quite different locations.